Wedding portrait reappears after more than 100 years. Historians turn pale when they zoom in on the bride. The auction house in Charleston, South Carolina, was sorting through items from the Whitmore estate when Dr. James Miller spotted the photograph. It was labeled simply as wedding portrait, around 1868. The picture sat quietly among boxes of old family letters and worn silver pieces. Its cracked glass and water-stained frame showed years of being forgotten. James, a historian who focused on photography from the Reconstruction period, paid $30 for it, mostly to complete his collection rather than because he felt strongly about it. For 3 weeks the photo stayed in his files at the University of Georgia. It was scanned and added to a long list of similar images. Then, while getting ready for a talk about life in the South after the Civil War, James looked at it carefully for the first time. He enlarged the picture on his screen and studied the couple standing stiffly in front of a large plantation house. The bride looked young, maybe 20, with soft features and dark skin. She was black. The groom was white, much older, in his mid-50s, with a thick beard and cold eyes staring straight ahead. An interracial marriage in 1868 South Carolina would have been very unusual, though not against the law during that short time after the war ended and before Jim Crow laws took full control. James zoomed closer on the bride's face. Her look was strangely empty, without the usual mix of nerves or happiness seen in wedding pictures. Her eyes stared past the camera, distant, as if her mind was far away. Then he noticed her hands. She wore white lace gloves, but they did not fit quite right. James sharpened the image, and his stomach turned. Around her wrists, where the gloves met the sleeves, were dark lines and raised marks. He recognized them right away from photos of people who had once been enslaved. They were scars from iron shackles used on prisoners and enslaved people. But this picture was from 1868. The Emancipation Proclamation came in 1863. The 13th Amendment ended slavery in December 1865. By 1868, slavery was against the law everywhere in the United States. So why did this bride have fresh shackle scars on her wrists? James sat back, thoughts racing. The marks looked new, the skin still dark and swollen, not old and faded. He looked again at the groom's hard face, the big plantation house behind them, the bride's blank stare. He checked her neck and saw another scar, a thin line that suggested a collar had been worn there. This woman had been held in chains when the photo was taken, 3 years after slavery was supposed to be over. James picked up his phone with shaky hands and called Dr. Angela Roberts, an expert in African-American history during Reconstruction at Howard University. "Angela," he said, voice tight, "I need you to see something. You should probably sit down first." Angela came to Charleston 2 days later with her research assistant, Marcus. James had sent high-quality scans, but she wanted to see the real photo. They met in his office, the picture under a bright magnifying light. Angela looked at it quietly for several minutes, her face growing serious. "The shackle scars are clear," she said at last. "And look here," she pointed to the bride's neck, another mark from a collar. "This woman was still in bondage when this picture was taken," Angela said, anger held back in her voice. Marcus, taking photos from different sides, added, "It happened more often than most people know. After the war, some former slave owners in faraway places just refused to let people go. They kept them alone, scared them, or used tricks like fake debts, forced work, or even marriages to keep control." "A forced marriage," James repeated slowly. "That's what this looks like. He married her to make it seem normal, to have official papers saying she was his wife, not his prisoner." Angela nodded. Married women had almost no rights back then. They belonged to their husbands. For a black woman married to a white man in the South during Reconstruction, with no family or friends to protect her, she would have been completely stuck. "We need to learn who they were," Marcus said. "The photo came from the Whitmore estate. Let's start there." James checked the auction papers. The estate belonged to Catherine Whitmore, who passed away at 93 the year before. Her family had owned Whitmore Plantation in Beaufort County since before the American Revolution until they sold it in 1932. "Beaufort County," Angela said, "coastal and very remote during Reconstruction. Federal soldiers stayed mostly in big cities like Charleston and Columbia. Rural places were left alone." She looked back at the photo. "This house. Can we figure out which one it is?" Marcus searched online. Historical list of plantation houses in Beaufort County. Whitmore Plantation. Main house built in 1820. Burned during Sherman's March but rebuilt in 1866. He showed an old photo from the early 1900s. The building matched exactly. So this picture was taken at Whitmore Plantation, James said. That means the groom was probably a Whitmore. Angela stood up, face firm. We're going to South Carolina. I want to see the plantation papers, land deeds, anything that can tell us who this woman was and what happened to her. Marcus spoke softly. What if the story doesn't have a happy ending? Angela glanced at the photo, at the young woman's scarred wrists and empty eyes. Then at least we make sure the truth about what happened to her is finally told. She deserves that. The South Carolina Historical Society in Charleston kept the Whitmore family documents, letters, account books, and property records going back decades. Angela, James, and Marcus spent 2 full days going through boxes for anything from 1868. Before the war, plantation records listed every enslaved person by name, age, and price. After 1865, the records became thin and unclear. The 1866 book showed the plantation being rebuilt with notes about workers, but no names. Marcus found the first useful clue in personal letters. A note from March 1868, Thomas Whitmore to his brother Robert in Atlanta. Things here are still hard. The freed people are not dependable and leave suddenly. I have taken steps to make sure we have steady workers for planting. Don't worry about my home life. Everything is legal and recorded properly, even if some people question my decisions. Let them question. A man has to do what he must to hold on to what belongs to him. Angela read it out loud, her voice sharp. Legal and recorded properly. He's talking about the marriage. James found another piece in the plantation accounts from June 1868. Marriage license obtained, Beaufort County Courthouse, witnessed and recorded. They actually filed it officially, James said, surprised. Of course, Angela answered bitterly. Make it legal so no one can say he's holding her against her will. Who's going to question a man's private life with his wife? Marcus opened another box. Here's a letter from a neighbor, August 1868, to Thomas Whitmore. Dear Thomas, I must share my worries about the young woman living at your place. Some of my workers have heard troubling noises and rumors are spreading that make me uneasy. These are hard times, but I ask you to make sure everything is truly willing and legal. We don't want to give federal officials any reason to step in. Signed, Jonathan Hartley. Someone noticed, James said. Someone tried to speak up, but not enough, Angela replied, reading Thomas Whitmore's answer. Your worries are noted but wrong. My wife and I handle our private matters as we choose. Mind your own home and stop spreading bad talk. The word wife felt cruel on the page. Marcus pulled up digitized records from the Beaufort County Courthouse. Searching marriage licenses from June 1868, he found it. Omar's Whitmore, age 51, planter, to Sarah. Age 19, Negro spinster. No last name for the bride, just Sarah. No family, no background, no surname, no relatives listed, Angela said quietly, as if she came from nowhere. Now they had a name to search for. Marcus looked through Freedmen's Bureau records, the government office set up to help newly freed people. If Sarah had been enslaved at Whitmore Plantation before the war, there might be a trace. 2 hours later, he found it. A 1865 list of people freed from Whitmore Plantation. Sarah, female, about 16 years old, house servant. Angela felt cold. Sarah had been enslaved there, freed in 1865, and 3 years later back on the same land, married to her former owner with Shackle scars under her wedding dress. More Freedmen's Bureau notes showed Sarah in January 1866 living in a freed people's settlement in Charleston, working as a laundress. She could read and write, which was rare for someone who had been enslaved. In April 1866, another note, Sarah, formerly of Whitmore Plantation, asking for help to find her family. Mother, Dina, sold to Georgia in 1859. Father unknown. Brother James, last seen in Mississippi. She had been searching for her loved ones like so many others after freedom came. Then the records went silent. Nothing more about Sarah until the marriage license in June 1868. 2 years missing. Angela reached out to experts on violence and forced labor during Reconstruction. The stories were painful but not surprising. Former owners used tricks like fake debts, false arrests, convict leasing, kidnapping, and violence to keep black people working for them. Young women without nearby family were especially EI targets. Some were told they owed money for years of care. Others were taken from roads and hidden on distant plantations. Angela shared the photo with Dr. Patricia Henderson at Duke University. Patricia looked closely. The wedding dress is too nice for what a freed woman could buy, but not very fancy. It seems made just for this picture. He wanted it to look proper and official. James researched Thomas Whitmore. He was 48 when the war ended, never married, angry about the South's loss. His father and brothers died in the war. The plantation was his whole life. His will from 1891 says he left a small piece of land and $500 to my faithful wife Sarah if she outlives me. Did she? Marcus asked. James shook his head. A note says wife deceased 1873, that's it. No details, no burial place. Sarah died around age 24, only 5 years. Marcus found a short newspaper piece from the Beaufort Republican, March 1873. Sad death at Whitmore Plantation. Mrs. Sarah Whitmore, wife of well-known planter Thomas Whitmore, died suddenly on Tuesday. Cause reported as fever. Mrs. Whitmore had a delicate health. Survived by her husband. Funeral private. Fever? Angela said flatly. How easy. No death certificate exists, James added. Either never done or lost. They sat quietly, looking at Sarah in her wedding dress, wrists scarred, eyes empty. A young woman who lived through slavery, felt freedom for a short time, tried to find her family, and was pulled back into chains through a paper called marriage. Others must have known, Marcus said. That neighbor's letter. He suspected trouble. Angela searched more Whitmore letters. In a packet from 1870, she found one from Elizabeth Hayes to Thomas Whitmore. Sir, I write for the Ladies' Aid Society. We hear worrying reports about your wife's condition. Christian kindness makes us ask to visit your home and check on Mrs. Whitmore's safety. Thomas Whitmore's reply was short. Madam, your meddling in my private life is not wanted. My wife is well looked after and needs no help from your group. Someone tried, Angela said. We need the Ladies' Aid Society records. If they cared enough to write, they may have written more. The Beaufort Ladies' Aid Society papers were at the local historical museum. The group started in 1866 by northern women who came south to build schools and help freed people. Their secretary wrote down every meeting and visit carefully. Angela found the first note about Sarah in January 1870 minutes. Mrs. Elizabeth Hayes shared a concern. She heard from a black servant about a young colored woman married to a white planter who may be in trouble. In March 1870, Mrs. Hayes said Mr. Whitmore refused our help. Topic set aside. Then, June 1870, a black woman named Dina came seeking her daughter Sarah. She arrived from Georgia, and through the Freedmen's Bureau, learned her daughter might be in Beaufort County. Sarah's mother had found her. She had come looking. Marcus kept reading. July 1870, Mrs. Hayes reports Dina was turned away from Whitmore Plantation by Mr. Whitmore, told his wife wanted no contact with her past life, and Dina should not come back. Dina returned to our office very upset, saying her daughter would never refuse to see her. He blocked her mother, James said, voice low. Her mother traveled all the way from Georgia, and he wouldn't let them talk. KED, a Freedmen's Bureau list from June 1870. Dina, about 43, formerly enslaved in Georgia, could read and write, looking for family. She came from Thornton Plantation, Wilkes County, Georgia, freed in 1865. James asked friends at the University of Georgia. Soon they found Dina in the 1860 Thornton Plantation slave records. Dina, female, age 33, house servant. One child, Sarah, age 7. Note, child Sarah sold to South Carolina buyer, 1859. Sarah was only 6 when taken from her mother. Census records trace Dina after she left Beaufort in 1872. In 1880 she was in Atlanta, working as a laundress in a boarding house with other black women. By 1900 in Birmingham, Alabama, listed as a widow, cooking for a family named Johnson. In 1910, Dina, age 83, still in Birmingham, living with Mary Johnson and her children, still working. Dina died in 1914, per Alabama records. buried in Birmingham's Elmwood Cemetery, Black Section. Cause, pneumonia. About 87 years old. She lived 41 years after Sarah, James said quietly. She carried that pain for more than 4 decades. Angela planned a trip to Birmingham. If Dina lived with the Johnson family, there might be descendants who knew her story. 3 weeks later, Marcus found Patricia Collins, a great-great-granddaughter of Mary Johnson, living in Atlanta and doing family history research. When Angela explained their findings, Patricia was quiet for a long time. "My grandmother told me about Dina," Patricia said. "She stayed with our family for years, helped raise my great-grandmother Mary. Grandma said Dina was the gentlest person but always sad. She spoke of a daughter taken during slavery, tried to find her after freedom, but couldn't save her." "Did she say the daughter's name?" Angela asked. "Sarah," Patricia answered. "Her name was Sarah. Dina said she found her but too late. Said her daughter was caught by a white man who called himself her husband, and he killed her, though no one called it murder. Grandma said Dina cried every year on what she thought was Sarah's birthday." Angela's eyes filled with tears. "We found a photograph of Sarah on her wedding day. We can see the shackle scars. We're going to share her story. We'll make sure people know what happened to her and that her mother never stopped trying." "Can you send me the photo?" Patricia asked. "I want to see her." Dina kept one thing always, a small piece of cloth Sarah embroidered as a child before she was sold. "It's all she had left. I have it now. I'd like to see Sarah's face at last." Angela promised to send it, but first they needed one more thing, where Sarah was buried. Burial records from 1873 in rural South Carolina were hard to find. Church books were missing pages, and many plantation owners buried black workers in unmarked spots on their land with no records. Thomas Whitmore's will mentioned no family graveyard, and local churches had no entry for Sarah Whitmore in March 1873. The Ladies' Aid Society notes gave a clue. April 1873, Mrs. Hayes spoke with Jacob, a black man who works at Whitmore Plantation. He said Mrs. Sarah Whitmore was buried in the old slave cemetery on the north side of the land, not the family plot. He called it wrong and shameful but could do nothing. He helped bury her there. Even in death he wouldn't treat her as his wife, Marcus said angrily. The old Whitmore land had changed owners any time since 1932. The house burned in the 1950s. Parts became houses, farms, and a nature preserve. James called the county historical office. A woman named Courtney helped with land records. "Many old burial grounds from plantations are forgotten and overgrown. We're trying to find and protect them. Let me check where the Whitmore slave cemetery might be." 2 days later, using old maps and new surveys, Courtney found it. A half-acre spot now in the nature preserve by a creek, under live oak trees. "No one has cared for it in years," Courtney said. "It's probably thick with plants, but I can get you access if you want to visit." Angela, James, and Marcus drove there on a warm May morning. Courtney met them and walked them down an overgrown path. The cemetery was, as she described, covered in leaves, vines, and years of growth. No headstones showed, but small rises in the ground marked graves. Live oaks spread above, draped with Spanish moss. "Most graves here are unmarked," Courtney said quietly. "Enslaved people and their families rarely got stones. We know it's a cemetery from old maps, but not who is where." Angela knelt and cleared leaves from one mound. Nothing, no name, no marker. "Sarah is here somewhere," she said, "with many others." They spent an hour taking photos, noting the spot with GPS. As they got ready to leave, Angela saw a young oak tree growing from one grave mound, its leaves fresh and green in the light. "Life goes on," she said softly. "Back in Charleston, they put everything together, the wedding photo of Sarah, the scars, the marriage paper that hid her captivity, records of her mother's efforts, the Ladies' Aid Society notes, and the CE of her unmarked grave." Angela said, "We need to share this story widely, not just in history journals, for Patricia and her family who carry Dina's memory, for descendants of everyone in that forgotten cemetery, for anyone who needs to know slavery did not end neatly in 1865, James agreed, and we should do something for that cemetery, get it cleaned, marked, and remembered. Marcus started a press release. The photo will surprise people. That's good. They need to see Sarah's face, her scars, and understand what happened behind a legal front. They stayed up late, writing an article, contacting news people, reaching descendants, planning a memorial at the cemetery. The article came out first in the Journal of Southern History, then in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Headline: Wedding photo shows enslavement after freedom. Historians uncover forced marriage used to hide captivity. The photo ran with both stories: Sarah's young face, empty eyes, and a close view of her scarred wrists. The story spread fast. National news picked it up. It was shared widely online and started deep talks about Reconstruction violence and slavery's long reach. Patricia Collins spoke to reporters about her great-great-grandmother's lifelong sadness. She showed the small embroidered cloth Dina kept, a faded square with a simple flower stitched by Sarah's young hands. This was all Dina had of her daughter, Patricia said. She held it for almost 50 years. Now people will know why. The Beaufort County Historical Society planned a memorial at the old slave cemetery. Money came in from everywhere to clear the site, add markers, and put up a board with the stories of those buried there. Scholars wrote about how forced marriage kept exploitation going. Historians found at least a dozen other cases of formerly enslaved women pushed into marriages with former owners right after freedom. Sarah's story was no longer buried. It was shared, taught, remembered. 6 months later, on a bright October morning, over 200 people gathered at the cleaned cemetery on former Whitmore land. Overgrowth was gone. Graves marked with plain stones. A memorial wall listed known names. In the center stood a larger stone for Sarah. It showed not the wedding photo, but a small daguerreotype Patricia found. Sarah, as a young girl, smiling. Below it read, Sarah born about 1848, died 1873, daughter of Dina. Survived slavery, sought freedom, pulled back into bondage by forced marriage. Her mother never stopped searching. May her story remind us justice delayed is justice denied. Angela held the wedding photo before the crowd. This image almost vanished, she said. It survived by luck, stored away, sold at auction, almost missed. But Sarah's story must be told, not just for records, but to show a truth we need to face. Slavery's violence did not stop with freedom. It continued in new ways, hidden by papers and normal appearances. Patricia stood beside her, holding the embroidered cloth. My great-great-grandmother, Dina, carried this for nearly 50 years. It was all she had of her daughter. She died never knowing if anyone would remember Sarah or care what happened. She cried every year on Sarah's birthday. Patricia looked at the people, tears falling. But we're here today. We remember. We care. We tell the truth. James talked about the research, how one photo led to documents, hidden stories, and women who tried to help Sarah but could not. The Ladies' Aid Society tried. Dina tried. Neighbors guessed and some spoke. But the law guarded Thomas Whitmore. The law called Sarah his wife and said husband-wife matters were private. The law was wrong. Marcus read from the society notes. Dina's pleas, unanswered letters of worry. Each word showed Sarah's humanity, her mother's love, the wrong that stole her life. The gathering ended with silence, then planting a young oak tree by Sarah's stone, life growing from sorrow, memory taking root. As people left, many stopped at the memorial wall, reading names, touching stones, leaving flowers or notes, promises to remember. Angela watched Patricia place the embroidered cloth at Sarah's stone. It would be kept safe later under glass. For now it rested on the ground, linking mother and daughter across more than 150 years. Is it enough? James asked quietly. Telling her story, building this place. Angela paused, watching light through the oaks on the stones. It can't undo what was done to her. Nothing can. But it's something. It's the truth at last. Sarah seen as a person, not property. Dina's pain honored. A record that lasts beyond us. She looked at the wedding photo in her hands. Sarah's scarred wrists, empty eyes. Maybe it helps us remember how easily wrong can hide behind what's called legal. How we must question what seems right. Marcus joined them, camera ready. He had recorded the whole event, faces, moments, the memorial. This goes into archives, he said. Students will learn about Sarah. Her story will be taught. The 3H. Historians stood together, looking at what they helped create. It began with a photo noticed by chance, a detail that made them look closer. It led to months of hard work, painful truths, and now this, a place of memory, a story told, a life honored. Patricia came over, eyes red but calm. "Thank you," she said simply, "for seeing her, for caring enough to find the truth, for giving Dina's grief a voice after so long." "Thank you for sharing it with us," Angela replied, "for trusting us." As they walked away, Angela looked back once more. The memorial stone stood firm, Sarah's young smile from the daguerreotypes surrounded by flowers, notes, and the promise she would not be forgotten. The wedding photograph had shown a terrible truth, but by showing it, it also brought back something valuable: Sarah's humanity, her place in history, her part in America's long fight for justice. Invisible and silenced in life, trapped and quiet. In death at last she was seen, she was heard, she was remembered. And that, Angela thought, was the very least they could do. Perhaps the most important thing of all.